The Beatles. I mean, what can you even say? They weren't just a band, they were a full-blown global phenomenon. They kicked off the British invasion, they changed fashion, they turned pop music into a genuine art form. It's so easy to think we know everything about the Fab Four, but their story is just packed with these fascinating little details that often get overlooked.
So let's dive in, because behind all the screaming fans and the mountains of gold records are these incredible stories that kind of reframe their entire legend. We're going to peel back a few layers on some key moments that might just change how you see the greatest band of all time. All right, first up, let's talk about the lineup. John, Paul, George, and Ringo. It feels like they were etched in stone, right? A perfect combination right from day one. But the reality is, the iconic Fab Four wasn't always so fabulously four. Way before they were the Beatles, they were a skiffle group called the Quarrymen. You gotta picture this, a 16-year-old John Lennon starting a band with his buddies from Quarry Bank High School. This wasn't some grand plan for world domination. Nope, this was just a bunch of kids bashing out the music they loved, inspired by guys like Lonnie Donegan. And it was in this noisy, ambitious little group that Lennon would first meet a young Paul McCartney, and not long after that, George Harrison. The seeds were definitely planted. What this shows us is a surprising amount of chaos, especially behind the drum kit. Pete Best joined in 1960, and he was the guy for 2 super important years while they were honing their craft in Hamburg. But then, bam! Right on the edge of their big break, he was out, and Ringo Starr was in. But the story doesn't even stop there. Picture this, it's 1964, the absolute height of Beatlemania, and Ringo gets tonsillitis. For 10 wild days, a session drummer named Jimmie Nicol literally became a Beatle, playing to sold-out arenas on their world tour. Can you even imagine getting that phone call? So why the huge change from Pete to Ringo right before they blew up? Well, the answer comes from the man behind the recording console, their legendary producer, George Martin. He just felt Pete's drumming wasn't solid enough for the studio. In his own very direct words, they needed a hot drummer for the records. And with that one single decision, the final piece of the Fab Four puzzle just clicked right into place. Okay, so with the final lineup in place, they started creating a sound that would take over the entire world. But what if I told you that one of their most iconic, instantly recognizable sounds has been hiding a secret for decades? A secret hidden in plain sight. You know it, that huge, crashing, jangly chord that kicks off a hard day's night. For years, guitar players have argued about how to play it, writing out all these different versions. But what if they were all wrong? What if the secret wasn't just in the guitars? To finally solve the mystery, researchers basically performed musical forensics. Using a mathematical tool called a Fourier transform, they broke the sound down into every single one of its component frequencies. We're talking over 29,000 of them. And what they found proved that none of the common guitar versions you see online could possibly be right. There were notes in there that just couldn't have come from the Beatles' guitars alone. And the full musical score shows us exactly what they found. You can see the parts for George's 12-string Rickenbacker, John's 6-string acoustic, and Paul's Hofner bass. But if you look really closely, you'll see a line for another instrument, one that has no business being there. That's right. The secret ingredient was their producer, George Martin, playing a piano chord at the exact same time. The piano notes weave in perfectly with the guitars, and the sound is mixed so seamlessly that it's completely hidden, creating that unique, singular sound that no one could quite replicate. It was exactly that combination of raw talent and studio magic that created a sound the world just couldn't get enough of. And I mean that literally. This leads us to a very public display of their dominance, a feat from 1964 that is almost impossible to comprehend today. The British invasion was in full swing. The band had just appeared on The Ed Sullivan Show, and America was completely captivated. But what they did on the Billboard music charts that spring was something no one had ever done before, and honestly, something no one has done since. They didn't just have the #1 song in the country. That would be impressive enough. Nope, they had the entire top 5. Just let that sink in. The 5 most popular songs in America, all by one band, all at the same time. And just look at this list. For the week of April 4th, 1964, the Beatles held spots 1 through 5 on the Billboard Hot 100. It's a level of cultural saturation that is just staggering, and it's a record that has stood for over 60 years. So that Billboard record has stood for over 60 years and will probably never be broken. But what about another famous Beatles record? One of the most repeated pieces of trivia about the band is about one of their most beloved songs. But is it actually true? You've probably heard it a million times.
Yesterday is the most covered song of all time, and with over 2,000 officially recorded versions, it's an incredible testament to the timelessness of that melody Paul McCartney came up with. It's a staple of Beatles trivia.
But does that claim actually hold up when you look at it closely? When you really start to dig into the data, the answer gets a lot more complicated.
Just take a look at this comparison. While Yesterday has an incredible 2,200 versions, it's not even close to the top. The Christmas Carol Silent Night has over 3,000. The gospel hymn All Fly Away has over 9,000 licensed recordings. And then there's the jaw-dropping number for George Gershwin's Summertime, which Guinness World Records puts it at over 67,000 versions. So while Yesterday is without a doubt one of the most covered pop songs ever written, the overall title clearly belongs somewhere else. All of these stories really build this picture of a band that was both a global phenomenon and, at the end of the day, just four guys. And that brings us to their final public performance, an event that has become one of the most iconic moments in rock history. But for the people on the street below, it was just a bit of noise.
It was a freezing cold January day in London. The band, who hadn't played a proper live show in years, hauled all their gear up to the roof of their office building for an unannounced lunchtime concert. They played for about 42 minutes before the police shut them down, stopping traffic and confusing all the people on Savile Row below. It would be the last time they ever played together in public.
The strange reality of this legendary moment is perfectly captured by one story. Decades later, a man was watching footage from that day and suddenly recognized his own mother in the crowd. He got super excited and asked her about witnessing this historic concert. Her memory? It was hilariously mundane. For her, it was just some distracting noise on a workday. She heard some music, sure, but she had somewhere to be.
And maybe that's the perfect ending. A band that commanded the world's attention, whose every move was scrutinized, ends their public career with an impromptu concert that most people on the street just saw as a minor distraction. From a teenage skiffle group to the secret ingredient in their own music and a final, almost accidental goodbye. The story of the Beatles is always more interesting than the legend.